Welcome everybody. Tonight is Tuesday, March 7th. It's about 7:32. We're in room 119. This is a planning and zoning general meeting tonight. It's going to be a little bit different because we don't have any applications to review, which would be a public hearing anyway. But we're trying to keep it a little bit of an open dialogue and make it a little bit of a working meeting. Before we get started, do you want to redo the agenda to get Bob out of here?
Yeah, we would need a motion to go into other business to cover one item, which is a potential request for potential, extension of time for the Norton Heights, formerly
So
called
can I
the
get a
Palmer
motion
Street
to
Development.
move into other business? George makes the motion, Adam makes the second,
Yep.
all in favor?
Yep.
There we go. Other business.
You may have read in the newspaper that, and there was a press release, that the Vacaros, V20, have purchased basically the rights to proceed with the Norton Heights Shopping Center development. Bob Maslin is here on behalf of the Vacaros, and Bob sent a letter noting that the approvals were about a year ago. You may recall the commission approved some change of use for Goddard Daycare and some other changes to the plans. They do, if you've driven by, you've noticed that there's a demo permit up. They expect to start demolition this week. They probably won't be able to start construction within the next 10 days, 2 weeks, and certainly won't be able to complete it for a while. So Bob has very prudently submitted a request letter. We figured we'd bring it to the commission tonight. They're clearly getting started shortly, but we wanted to run it by you, get a few months to start construction with the understanding that it's likely going to take at least a year and a half to finish the project.
So what Bob sent in the letter on, I guess, I got it Monday, right? You said it Monday morning, I think?
I think I sent it in Friday, but I did send it on Monday.
I think Jeremy emailed it out to everybody.
I
I can't find my copy. We're good, Bob.
Oh, okay.
The bottom line is, thank you, the bottom line is we're asking for a year extension. They did actually start doing site demo. I think they closed on the 1st. They did started the site demo on the 2nd, which I think was Wednesday or Thursday. We were doing stuff on Thursday, so they have technically started. But then I saw this thing in the paper the other day and thought it might throw them off their insurance. So the bottom line, just to keep the ball moving, is the bottom line of this is please consider this letter as a request for a 1-year extension with deadline to commence work. So I would request a motion to, maybe makes a motion, but for a second. There's a second, Alex a second, all in favor? Great, aye. You get your 1-year extension.
Thank
You're good. Just as an aside, we do this all the time for people. And this is a big project, we don't
Yes.
want to hold them up.
We do not want to hold this thing. I don't think anybody
Any
in town
other thing on
wants
other business, you want to go back to the top again?
Yeah, we may as well go back to the top.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is a federal realty update. I've been speaking to Patrick McMahon, who's a developer, or the lead developer for the project, on a bunch of different items. He told me he wanted to come in front of the commission, and then you guys reached out to him.
He had a conflict tonight,
Okay.
but I did get a summary from him a little bit in terms of what's going on. You can see that the first building, they've started the upstairs, the residential apartments, starting to rent them out. The downstairs retail, there's a few tenants. Choice Pet has moved in, and there'll soon be others moving in. The R3 building, which is the building, the L-shaped building closest to Heights Road, just starting to move in some residential tenants. And similarly, the downstairs, there's 1 or 2 downstairs tenants. What's taking a while, and what will continue to go on between now and April, May, June, are the tenant fit-ups, especially for restaurants, which these days take a little longer because supply chain issues and other issues. So there you can see they're still working on the Gregory's Coffee building. They're doing some tenant fit-ups. Retail's much quicker and easier to move in, so you'll see retail tenants starting to move in. And things are going well, but they're going to be out there till June, fine-tuning some things, finishing some things up. So they're in the stretch run, but they have a few more months to go.
He intimated to me last time I talked to him that he may have to come up to us just to give us a list of the tenants in terms of the square footage. in the approval, just so everybody remembers, if you weren't aware not here, in the approval, it says there's X percentage for restaurants, Y percentage for quick service, another percentage for retail, and personal service. And he wanted to give us that to make sure it was in compliance.
Yes, I spoke to him and he said, you know, it's certainly a moving target because they haven't fully leased yet. So they're talking to numerous tenants. More so, you've seen there's many, many restaurants that have committed, some personal service uses, some retail, but not a lot. And he wants to reach out to the commission, explain how he's complying with that upper limit on certain categories. So you said the 14th or the 28th likely? for
Yeah,
that
so
date?
he'd like to
Or
come
even
back
early April?
to give a brief report to the commission either next week on the 14th or the 28th.
Okay.
We have busy agendas both of those nights, but I think we'll probably have the time to fit him in for either one of those nights, which is whatever you think is best or most appropriate. He's able to come the 14th or the 28th.
That's fine. See you, Rob.
He's not looking for us to change it, it's just
No.
a report and just kind of a, just
It's more of a
proof
bring
and
you
plus a audit, summary in person.
Summary in person and tell you about some of the tenants that have committed. And as I said, that changes all the time, so they probably have an update for you on new tenants that they're bringing in or about to bring in.
Do you see anything about the wrapping the HVAC on Equinox in fencing?
He did talk about trying to screen that a little better.
Okay.
I know they're working on that. The Public Plaza, they're finishing that up as well. So he can give you that type of update on
Okay.
a number of aspects of the project.
Any questions from any commissioner on that project? Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure there was anything that pops up in this quote-unquote working meeting or open meeting that we can ask them. Okay, accessory dwelling units. Some of these items we're gonna kind of sort of talk about relate to what's going on up in Hartford and the bills in Hartford. I just call it Hartford in general. Because last year we opted out of the accessory apartment provision in a prior bill. Was that 2020 or 2021?
Last year was 21.
It was
Last year?
21, wasn't it?
22?
Oh,
I thought it was
I think it was
that
20, I
was-
think it was 2021 we opted out, but it go back to
No,
effect in 22.
parking was 21,
Yeah,
ADUs was
ADUs
just
like
this
last
fall.
summer, last
Okay.
fall, yeah, it's
Yeah,
recent.
ADUs was this fall.
22.
So we opted out of that, so the idea was we're gonna do our own. I have my own personal thoughts, and I wanted to just relate those to you guys. I think eventually we're gonna get a report at some point in time from Dave Keating, is that right? Is
Yeah,
that
we've
what's
started talking to Dave about some of the topics that will need to be covered. You know, max size, minimum size, what zones, only on water and sewer, maybe on septic. So what we're trying to do is aim for a meeting maybe in April,
Okay.
where we can sit down and start hashing through some of the topics, some of the issues, and get a sense from the 6 commission members, hey, where do you want us to go with this? In terms of put together a proposal, if so, how expansive? What are the various limits? And by then, we might have also an indication what's going on around us in terms of other communities.
Okay, because Westport did something totally different than what Greenwich did. Westport had the idea of making them big, Greenwich had the idea of making them small. The definition of an ADU, and always jump in and correct if I'm wrong, is it becomes an ADU technically as soon as they put in a stove. You can have a washer, you can have a refrigerator in there, you can have a sink in there, you can have a toaster, you can have a microwave, a stove, it becomes an ADU. In our town, we have a bunch of, and Amy can kind of chime in on this too, because she knows, we have a bunch of pool houses that have rooms that are technically bedrooms, but they're not bedrooms. And in most of the plans that we see, you might have someone building a pool house, and it's a bedroom, it's not a bedroom, it is a bedroom. The thing that I want to do is in terms of this, is have the latitude to approve that as a bedroom. And the reason behind that is because of the fire code. Because a bedroom becomes a bedroom when there's a closet in it. There's different
Egress
windows.
window.
Yeah, there's
And
different
egress,
windows.
Or egress door, yeah.
Egress windows and non-egress. So I don't know if we're technically gonna call a pool house without a stove an ADU or not. But if an architect's gonna come forth with a plan, it should say, you know, it doesn't have a kitchen, it doesn't have a stove, but this is a bedroom. and the window is a fire code window, and it's an egress window that the firemen can get in and out, so we're above board on stuff. That's one item. The other thing that,
Which also speaks to when you're in septic versus sewer. The latitude on whether the property can handle that extra bedroom and whatnot.
Yep.
Yeah.
because in quote-unquote pool houses, and just using that as an example, the main house might be on sewer and water, but the pool house can be on septic, just because it's cheaper, and it doesn't get used that much. That's what my brother actually did out in the Hamptons, because to connect to the sewer system was a whole big problem. So we just dropped to septic, and it was a lot cheaper, and I don't know what the difference is out of town, but if we're gonna do it, I'd rather be above board. My personal belief, and I'd like to hear from you guys, is that I think ADUs are fine in anything that's over an acre of land. When you get under an acre of land, like a half acre or a third or even a fifth, then it kind of sort of becomes an issue. You gotta deal with the parking, you gotta deal with the traffic, you gotta deal with, being able to park cars in there and I said again, park cars in the driveway.
You mean 1 acre or more? I mean, the
Yes,
zones would either
yes.
be 1 acre or more.
Yes. So it's 1 and 2 acres, because I think, and the way the state rule was done, and again, you guys chime in, is what the state wanted to do is do ADUs as of right across the entire town. 90% of our stuff in town is done by special permit. If someone's got a 5th acre lot and he thinks he can get, or she thinks he can get in an ADU that's legal, that's fine, come in and prove it to us as per a special permit. So that's my belief on it. I don't think we need to see every single 2 acre piece of property that wants to put an ADU or a bedroom or a bedroom and a kitchen and a garage. That's way in the back. I don't think it's a great use of our time, as long as it approves with.
You're
building-
talking as of right, but you're not
Yes.
precluding special permitting on a half acre zone where a parcel is oversized and can accommodate it.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So the way I'm looking at it is as of right for everything over an acre, with a building permit that's proper, and then anything under an acre, we would look at it with a special permit. That's my working thought, so I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts if you think, because I think what we want to do is give Jeremy and Fred some direction. They can relay it onto Dave Keating, and when he does his research, we can go from there. Anybody's thoughts on this side?
One thought was, we're somewhat limited, if I remember from the discussion in the fall, about our sewage, because we rely on Stanford to treat it. And we just have a certain cap or a certain amount of stuff we can literally send to them, right? As our sort of our agreement. I'm wondering if there's a cap, somewhere where we can start capping the number of ADUs, because imagine if we say it's just, let's take the other extreme and we say it's right for anybody, like we take the state's view that we've opted out of, and everybody in town builds an ADU and we add 5,000 more bathrooms and showers to the septic system, or let's say 4,000 because 2/3 of the town are hooked up to it, or 80%. We would certainly go over that flow cap, right? So we need to think about not just, right, septic has to be right sized for any dwelling or structure with any number of bathrooms or bedrooms. But we also need to think about what the public drain on the septic system would be if we were to just allow everybody to build ADUs everywhere.
Sewer system.
Sewer system, yeah.
I don't disagree with it at all, but I can tell you, if someone's got a pool house, they can put a bathroom inside their pool house today, and we don't even see it. Because this is an ADU is effectively creating bedrooms. Right, I mean, all those houses on Long Lake Point, I think every single one of them probably has a pool house. I bet every single pool house has got a bathroom. And I think maybe, does that get caught in the building department? Do they keep head counts of that, or?
No, not really. Certainly if you're on septic, you need health department approval.
Yeah.
And If you're on sewer and you're connecting to the sewer, you need approval from sewer services. So that's something, as I write down what's going, the conversation we'll toss that in as one of the concerns and things we need to investigate.
Can we define an ADU as having not just the kitchen and the stove, but can we make our definition different than the states and say it
Sure.
also must include a working bathroom if you're gonna put a bedroom in?
Well, in theory, a dwelling unit would
think,
you would
but,
need
yeah.
a bathroom and a kitchen and a bedroom.
But you could see
And a
something
kid.
like,
Yeah.
like if you're gonna rent it out to a stranger, yes, but if you're gonna have your in-laws move above your garage and maybe that's somehow connected to your
Yeah.
home,
Yeah,
they might not necessarily need
their
uh,
own, just
their own bathroom or their
dedicated
own
bathroom.
kitchen. They might
Yeah.
want a bedroom and a bathroom, but no kitchen, not an ADU, pretty much is.
Agreed, 100%. That's where I'm
Yeah.
going with the fire windows. Because if I stick my mother in my backyard, you know, she doesn't need a kitchen,
Right.
you know? She needs a bedroom.
But are we calling that an ADU?
That's what I think that's,
Yeah.
Is there anything to prevent that today?
there's nothing to prevent, when these guys get building plans and it's got a kitchen in it, they go denied.
We don't
Yeah.
consider, we don't consider a unit without a kitchen and a bathroom an actual dwelling unit, but at the same time, we don't want folks occupying for like a pool
Non-dwelling
house, right? Full-time
But,
for multiple months of the year.
yeah, I can recall a scenario where somebody wanted to build a detached garage
Yep.
Yeah.
and wanted it to be accessory dwelling setbacks, but they wanted a basement in that garage for car lifts. And the building department said, if you're doing a basement, even though there's no plumbing there, it was just electrical, you need to adhere to the main building setbacks because that basement could be construed as more building space. So, and there was no kitchen, no bathroom, no bedroom, no egress windows entertained, it was just the underground excavation that popped it into, you need to be,
So it became two
setbacks
dwellings.
became different. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's accessory dwelling units that we have, detached structures that have accessory setbacks. At what point do they become a different scrutiny and become, you need to hit main setbacks? Because I think that's, and I don't know if that'll be captured in the less than 1 acre zone where it becomes more sensitive, but those are kind of some of the other things that, you know, in an acre zone, the building setbacks are more generous and you're less onerous on your neighbors. So,
We had that guy that came in that was building the house and he was building a pool house. And he flat out said, I want this to be a place where my, cousins can stay during Thanksgiving. But there was no kitchen. And he was above board about it the entire time.
yeah, but, so I do think to set the line in the sand, to say we don't need to see special permits on all of these, what are we comfortable with, to say all of this is reasonable, we don't need to be under a microscope every one of those applications. The things that become a little bit tighter, less than 1 acre zoning, definitely I would agree with,
Okay.
yeah.
Anything, George?
So I'm thinking of these ADUs really as studio apartments,
Yeah.
so that they have basic facilities and a
Yep.
place to sleep. And so that's my kind of definition I'm running with in my head. The other thing I would say is that I don't see any reason why someone with a half acre couldn't have an ADU such as we're describing. I happen to live in a half acre.
Yep,
I know it's available.
it could
I
work.
know a pool house could work even out of
Yeah.
that. So, rather than having to get into special permits even in a half acre, that's my orientation at the moment.
Okay.
So you're thinking more of a half acre.
Yeah.
It meets all these
frankly-
other hurdles,
Yes.
yes,
Yes, indeed.
yes.
But I do also want to be sensitive to the economics. There is supposedly, some incentive for us to be a little more sensitive to folks who cannot afford a 2-acre home and but
Yeah.
would like to live around
Yeah.
there, and
Well,
so if they get
it's-
into an ADU, they're happy.
It's about squeezing the balloon. We're not saying we're gonna sacrifice our 20% coverage ratio, because that is a natural governor.
Mhm.
Like, okay, you have a 20% coverage ratio, then you can't build a big house and an ADU. You're gonna run out of room on a
Right.
half-acre lot. You just are going to.
Yeah.
What, the thing that also, I wanna make sure we kind of sort of weave it in there and get your guys' reflection, and probably is gonna get bumped to the ladder, is one of the arguments for not having a special permit on the state level is it's more time and more onerous and more this and more that on people, because someone's gonna come in here and give us a presentation and hire a lawyer. What I would also propose, if somebody wants to ask for the special permit fee to be waived, which is like $500, what's a special permit, $550 or something like
We could have a separate permit for ADUs,
that? Bingo.
A separate,
separate fee
yeah.
to establish an ADU. Okay.
Because that was one of the things, it said they didn't want to use special permits because it's onerous on the developer and they can't afford it, and the grandmother, this, and I was like, fine, you know?
I'm still thinking about George's comment. I do think if we are under half-acre zoning, we do need to look at the accessory setbacks versus main building setbacks. And if it is an accessory dwelling unit where it's going to be people are living in it, do we want to look at that it has to meet the main building setbacks versus accessory setbacks?
That's why I basically said, I mean, I'm not saying you couldn't put an ADU at your house, it might be easy,
Mhm.
but all I want to do is just come in and show us for 10 minutes. I mean, Bob was
Yeah.
here for 30 seconds.
Well, the setbacks are knowable, I mean, the sides are 10 feet, so you're probably not gonna put anything on the sides, but front and back, I don't even know what they are, but they're much more generous, but I
30,
think there is
40.
to do.
30 to
30,
40,
40.
15
Yeah,
Okay.
so,
for half
I don't know why it couldn't be seen administratively that it fits within the
Yep,
setbacks.
yep.
Some of our more, the higher density zones have setbacks as little as 5 feet for
Yeah.
accessory structures, whether that be a garage or.
Yeah, I think I'd have a problem if that was an apartment.
Yeah, 5 feet would
Yeah,
be,
I would have a problem with that.
5 feet.
Yeah.
would be very close, for sure.
Yeah,
I think some consideration should also be given to the type of accessory dwelling unit. So not only could you have a standalone accessory dwelling structure on the property, but it could also be included as part of the existing residence, right?
Great.
Just on one side of your house, or in the basement, or in the attic. There's a lot of different considerations with respect to the actual type and location of the accessory dwelling
Yeah.
unit,
With
as
its
well
own
as the
ingress
size,
and egress.
as
Yeah.
well as the size of the unit. So do you want to, set a maximum in terms of, 800 square feet, 1,000 square feet?
Then I'd like to have the research done on that, because
And I
I
think
agree with you 100%.
a huge part of this is the parking.
It's, my example is that, and I think I talked about this before, is when I was a kid, my dentist and my pediatrician were inside a house, right? You walked in the front door, that was Dr. Godwin's house, and on the left, that was Dr. Godwin's office.
Goblin?
Godwin, he's a
I was
good.
gonna say goblin.
And my dentist was the same way.
My type still is, but anyway.
Yeah, but my point is, there's a guy that lives in my neighborhood who lives in someone's house, his name's Gene Coyle. His house has got 2 front doors. His sister moved in with him, and she had her own separate apartment inside their house, which is exactly what Fred's talking about. And I've been in her apartment. She had her own bathroom, she had this, she had all the stuff. She did not have a kitchen, because they all ate together. That was technically an ADU, because Jean didn't have to go on her side, and she didn't have to go on his side. But, they could have rented it out to, and Mary, she might have paid rent, I don't really know, it doesn't matter to me. But relative to this affordable housing stuff, if we could count Jean's house as an ADU, maybe that counts towards something. I don't know. Relative to ADUs, it doesn't
Right.
count
The only way
towards
it
more
would count
point anyway.
is if you had them deed restricted and
Right.
made that a
Yeah.
requirement.
That's not
that-
gonna happen.
So the problem with the deed restriction, there's benefits, drawbacks. One of the issues is someone needs to manage it, right? Income verify, certify every year. Well, if you're just a typical homeowner, that's could be a burden.
For no benefit.
For that, they would not achieve the benefit, the town would get the benefit,
Right.
but the homeowner would be out $12,000 a year for doing that.
Because see, I don't think we're chasing moratorium points, I think we're chasing affordable units, whether they're natural or they're unnatural. I
So
mean,
this
that's
would,
one of the
I
bills.
think George's
That's what-
point was a very good one. It gives more diversification of housing. You're not renting in say, a Federal Realty situation or an Avalon situation, and those units are very popular.
Yeah.
It's a different type of setting, maybe even smaller than that.
Have we ever considered tax abatement for people that would consider?
It's come up in discussion, but every once in a while, me personally, I get lazy because you gotta pump it up 2 notches on the ladder. And I brought up with Jim Pannon once, and he was like, whoa, 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 whoa. And even I said something about fees and waiving items and stuff like that, and he said, oh, now you're touching the budget. And that's, then you're going to first selectman and board of finance and all that stuff. Can you do it? Yeah, but, you know, we wanted, it kind of gets outside of our.
Yeah, I mean, there may be an opportunity, sometimes the Affordable Housing Trust Fund has money, but you'd have to go to them and get approval,
Okay.
and would they be willing to, we'll call it subsidize?
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It hasn't been broached yet.
Anything
Topic
else
for
on-
another time.
Anything else on the hit item?
We just have to remember about parking too.
Yeah.
That was it,
It's
like,
a con, you know, we always think about it, but if, you know, if we do go down the ADU road, do we say each bedroom needs 1 spot, and then does that naturally push out the parking that's already in
And I
the
think
structure itself?
that's the huge issue, because
Correct.
when you are in 1 acre zoning, in theory,
You might
you
have-
should have adequate space on the property to accommodate parking. When you get into half-acre zone and you've got driveways that are just a straight shot and have no turnarounds and have no parking courts, then it becomes an entirely different complexion for that neighborhood when you have potentially tenants and parking on the street constantly. And that's really, that is a different complexion entirely.
they have that in Greenwich, in one neighborhood in Greenwich, which is, I think it's Byron, that's the most southern portion of Byron, right?
Byron.
Yeah, it's in there, and I did a deal down there, and everyone's parking on the street.
Everyone, so you can't even drive down there.
But like, and God rest his soul, Gene Coyle, when his sister lived in his house, they had a big driveway, but it was only 1 car in, 1 car out.
Yeah.
So it's brother and sister, so if she was wanting to get out, she'd, move her brother's car.
Yeah.
I don't know how your house works if your driveway's single, but in mine, it's got double. If it's a third party that's leasing it or somebody else, and
Yeah.
the homeowner either gets stuck or doesn't get stuck. I mean, I brought the example up when I was a kid, when I lived in my parents' house after college, I basically lived in an ADU. And there was 1 car in the driveway. And, I would block in my dad on Saturday mornings and he'd blow a gasket and wake me up. When he was going out to play golf at 7:30 and I just got home 4 hours earlier. So that's why, with regards to your 1 acre versus a half acre and whatever, we can pick a number, I just want to be able to see the plans. Administratively, these guys can figure out, staff can figure out in 2 seconds.
Well, just so you know, so I have this 1.5 acre, and we have a 2-car garage, and we have a driveway in which we can park 2 cars at the end of the driveway, and they can still get out of the garage. And we also did add a little, what was I thinking, a passing lane, a little area where you can park another car.
Yeah.
So there are ways.
Oh,
You know.
We live on a street that has turned over a lot, and there's a lot of New Yorkers that have come, and it becomes who's gonna tell the new guy that they can't park on the street? It's your turn. That's what it becomes into,
Yeah.
who's gonna tell the new guy that he cannot park on the street?
Yeah.
And so it kind of becomes a little bit of that,
Yeah, I moved my car last weekend and I left it there on Saturday night on the street and woke up Sunday morning, Jesus, I'm the idiot.
Yeah. And they
And you're not allowed.
don't necessarily
Yeah.
know the ordinances, that they're,
Right.
you're really, the ordinances
Yeah.
are, you shouldn't be parking on the street from these months and
Right.
whatever.
Okay.
Okay, we'll get started.
You
Thank
good?
all.
All
Good
right,
good
next
feedback.
item. Okay, good. Federal Realty got it, accessory apartments got it. Okay, potential zoning regulation amendments. This is really you guys. The only thing I want to add to this as another bullet point is are we doing anything hard and fast or serious on outdoor dining?
Well, outdoor dining, we can cover that first. Outdoor dining, as you know, the governor's orders allow folks to have outdoor dining until, is it April 1st or April 15th?
I believe it's April 1st.
April 1st. So a few more weeks. So we have started speaking to certain restaurants, saying, hey, great, for a few more weeks. And then, of course, this time of year it's pretty cold. But we've said to them, if you want to do anything after that, it's going to be a permanent request, and it's going to planning and zoning. And their first question is going to be parking. Where are you going to park? Because you're chewing up some of your own parking. So we will likely be pulling together requests. We'll try to package them together to get as many on the same agenda as possible. We have started talking to a few. Bodega and the Goose both had outdoor dining last year. Their request has to go to the Board of Selectmen first because that's a town parking lot. So whether you see them this year or next year, they've already both approached the town, and that's, you gotta get the property owner's approval first.
So for argument's sake, for this year, if someone's gonna impede on their own, like Rory's is gonna impede on their own parking, do they have to get a variance from the
Nope.
ZBA?
They need to, if they wanna do anything after April 1st, I spoke to Brian at Rory's.
Uh-huh.
I said, you need to go to planning and zoning and get it permanently approved. Their concern is going to be parking.
Okay. So you're not even going variance route for a year?
No, it would have to be the planning and zoning,
Okay.
and that's gonna be up to you guys, because most of the year, if it's permanent, is it gonna be permanent installation, or is it gonna be something that comes down? If it's permanent installation, that means whatever parking there is permanently lost, but you might get a better looking product because they'll invest more money. If it's a temporary installation, proprietors might not be willing to invest a lot of money, knowing that it's either a year or 2 years, or it's just seasonal, that they have to bring it in and store it somewhere.
And a variance is permanent anyway, so it doesn't make any sense. Okay.
So, you're gonna start seeing requests coming.
Okay. Then the next subject you have on here is zoning permit and land use application. We approved that already, didn't
The
we?
commission did support that. That's, just wanted to give you the heads up. That is going to the RTM on March 20th, which I think is 10 days away. The Rules Committee said, yep, put it on our next agenda. So that is coming up soon.
Next thing on here, design business zone DB.
What we wanted to talk to you a little bit about the design business zone. That is the area which I'll call it east of, if you think of the post road in Sedgwick, eastward till about Birch. It's the small Victorian houses
Yes.
that you think of. Occasionally there's a larger building. The zone has been designed for many years. It used to be DB1 and then DB2, kind of where Grant's Auto Body is and Trader Joe's. But in recent years, we've combined it to just design business zone. There-
So it's from Birch to the North
Sedgwick,
Carolina?
Sedgwick to Birch.
Got it, okay, yep.
So if you
Okay.
call it 77 Post Road, 777, where Allstate is,
Yep,
all the way to, let's call it Grant's Auto Body, Trader Joe's, and everything in between.
okay.
Part of that's a historic district, church in there. There's what used to be Four Seasons Farm, which is now the big real estate office. I can't remember the name of it these days.
Houlihan Lawrence.
Houlihan Lawrence. So it was,
Run here.
Grand Harris TV 's in there.
so traditionally, that's kind of been a transition zone between downtown, which allows retail, and the service business zone, which is automobile related, which is your car washes, your big restaurants, your landscaping companies, home contractors, etc. DB is design business, kind of a small office, you know, small lawyer's office could go in inventory and building.
Put a nail salon in there.
Nail salons, we've seen,
A couple of years, like a year. and a
we've
half ago.
Do
seen
they?
salt
Is
caves,
that approved?
real estate offices,
Maybe got a
we have a
massage.
contractor's office or two. But when you read the regs, there are, for example, by special permit, you can put in commercial sales and service, which may include external storage or activity. So that would be a fence company, a landscaping company. You're like, yeah, I'm not so sure that that's really what the commission wants in that zone. We have received a lot, dozens, of inquiries recently about putting retail there and putting landscaping companies there. And we've been religious about saying, no retail in that zone does not allow retail, and landscaping companies are more appropriate for the service business zone than a zone where you might see a small doctor's office, or Quest Diagnostics, or whatever. So we wanted to bring that to the attention of the commission. You know, we've had a lot of people saying, but what about this, what about this? Fred and I discussed internally the possibility of tightening it up, making it clearer what's allowed, what isn't allowed. I've reached out to Dave to get his historical feedback, which is always helpful. But what we don't want to see is the DB zone either being swallowed up mostly as a more service business zone. We don't want to see more car washes, more contractor yards, landscaping companies, and we don't want to see retail starting to filter out of the downtown, which is our other concern. Because once the retail leaves downtown, we don't have it downtown.
They would move to get cheaper rent.
Oh, yeah, well, that's what some guys came in today. I'm retail, but I don't want to pay downtown rent. I said, well, then your other choice would be, other retail locations would be Corona Heights, Federal Realty, or Good Wife Shopping Center. But DB zone is not, oh, but it's so much cheaper, I can make more money. Sorry, but we don't want retail flowing all the way up.
So we have zoning codes.
Yeah, so,
I think one of the distinguishing
Do we-
features is the outdoor activity requirement, right? So when you compare the DB zone to the service business zone, which is directly adjacent to the DB zone, so down as you get, past, down by Duchess and
splash.
and,
The taekwondo
You know,
place has got the
the
logo
the-
down the back.
where all the
Yeah.
restaurants are, really. The commercial sales and service allowed in the service business zone requires that there be an external storage or activity use associated with that.
So how about the Derizen Spa? What's their outdoor activity?
That's a personal service use, which is
Okay.
allowed in this zone. So this
Okay.
zone would allow massage, nail salon,
Yeah.
photographer, someone's coming to us, photographer, great, that would be perfect for an old historic,
Yep,
Victorian
Yeah, yeah.
building. So, personal service uses are allowed by special permit. They're usually smaller lots, so that kind of is restricting too, is, if you think of those buildings, not a lot of them have a lot of parking. We do allow, I think, the assisted living facility in there at the corner of Post
Yep.
and Brookside.
yep.
That's probably the biggest lot.
That goes way back though.
That goes way back and has the underground parking.
But that's the grandfather thing.
Right, grandfather.
That never left.
So,
But a lot of those houses along, the commercial houses now, I'll call them, have a lot of land behind them on both
Right.
sides.
yeah.
On one side, there are additional structures in the back, which are rented out, I think, for housing.
Yeah, there's a couple like that, yeah.
Yeah, so there's, I hesitate to limit use of those additional properties, but.
Right.
But that's
I hear what
residential.
you're saying.
It does allow residential
Yeah.
uses, so if you wanted to live in one of those houses, great,
Oh, you
no
can?
problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we've told people, hey, maybe if you want to make an apartment building, there might be a way to do that, or condos or something.
That was the Allstate guy. The Allstate was an Allstate office, then they got approved for offices and they switched it back to residential. Because they
Yeah,
didn't rent
we've
it.
been struggling with the Allstate because
They never leased it.
they've talked about a landscape company. We thought, well, that's not gonna work there. Where are you gonna put
So,
landscape
Rick,
trucks?
What
Maybe
What
nice
types
antique
of
store.
residential are accepted there?
Well, it says that permitted principal uses is everything allowed in the R1.5 zone, which is single-family house.
Okay.
So if you wanted to take one of those, what looked like architect's office, Jacek Piekarzinski, the architect, used to have an office,
Yep,
and you
yeah.
turn it into a house, oh,
Yeah.
cool, great,
Yeah.
single-family house.
But like a cluster senior overlay zone or things like that would not fly there?
Yeah, you need there's a minimum lot size
Yeah.
for condos.
Yeah.
We do allow dwelling units on upper floors, so if you wanted to do nail salon on the lower floor,
Yeah.
and as long as you have enough parking, turn the upstairs into an apartment. Another way to get smaller, affordable units.
So our task is to scrub this and have
Yeah, I
a
think we're-
microscope on what we want there.
I think that's what we're trying to figure out is, do the regulations reflect the town plan, what the commission wants?
Okay.
What's interesting is, There's not a lot of vacancy in town in certain types of areas, and there's a lot of demand for certain things, for whatever reason. Now, it changes through the years, of
Yeah.
course, but used to be bagel shops. All we hear about is bagel shops, or video stores, or whatever. So,
Thanks.
Banks was, oh my gosh, banks. So, wanted to bring it to your attention, it's something we're gonna look at as staff. Wanted to get your feedback tonight, kind of informally, but as you continue to drive down that part of town. kind of
So
look-
are there a fair amount of vacancies through there?
There are, what,
More
two
than
or
our
three
standard?
spots?
It seems it,
It seems that there's 2 or
Yeah.
3 spaces,
yeah.
and as Steve pinpointed, they are cheaper than downtown spaces.
Yep,
So people look at it and say, oh, it's half the price, or 2/3 of the price. Why would I go downtown? I can get either more space or whatever, and it's move-in ready, or whatever. I'm like, sorry, we don't want to have retail going all the way from Bertucci's all the way to Giovanni's. We decided not to do that.
so the Fletcher redevelopment is or is not in that zone, because that's right across from Birch.
That is office zone, that's designed
different.
office.
Yep, so it's out of that spot.
Yeah,
Okay,
behind
got it,
Duchess.
got
So
it.
Duchess has served this business,
Got it.
and as you get further, I'll call it east, going down the post road, you get to, as I said, Trader Joe's, his grandfather designed business, used to be A&P, so it's a grandfathered retail space. And as you get further down, you have
Yeah.
numerous different
Yeah,
uses.
yeah,
The other thing I was trying to add is, we don't want to lose those houses.
Right.
Those things are beautiful.
Yeah, they're attractive.
That makes it the
It's
town.
nice.
Westport, I just did a deal up in Westport, which was 272 Post Road East, I think. It was one of those old houses. They hired Richard Granoff, who's a great
Oh, yeah,
architect
sure.
out of Greenwich, to redesign it. And there's 3 fancy offices in there, there was a real estate office in there, and there's a Huntington Learning Center on the ground floor. And they just did a fantastic, it looks beautiful. And to your point earlier, there's this humongous parking lot in the back. When I looked at it, I'm like, what are you gonna do with that? I guess eventually we'll go to P&Z and get something there because their lot coverage is low. And the thing was, it was worth a lot of money, it was valuable, they did a great job. But I don't wanna lose those
Yep.
houses.
Okay, great, thank
And
you for
what's
the
the
feedback.
blade signs?
You
What's
know,
everything in
before we move on, I do think some additional scrutiny needs to be placed on whether we want to allow commercial sales and services or not in the design business zone. So that's the first question. Do we want to allow commercial sales and services in the DB zone? And if we do, does it require outdoor storage or activity? Or should it not include outdoor storage and activity?
Well, we
Those-
jumped, way back when, we jumped on the guy that, in Bob Calvy's building, remember the,
Yeah, 110 Post Road,
that used furniture guy that came in and went?
Christians?
No, it's across
It
the
was-
street, it was a plumbing space.
it was,
It was Art Deco, and it was like,
it was across from Chipotle.
Modern barn?
yeah,
Modern, yeah,
that guy.
the
He,
modern.
Yeah.
he took stuff in and never sold it, but we made him put stuff outside, and
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
came and went. But what does commercial sales and service mean?
Basically retail. So
Yeah.
if you're selling paper, tables, chairs, shirts, coffee mugs, whatever, it's,
Yeah. We don't, I personally don't want to see retail.
Yeah, no, I think parking becomes an issue if you get a successful retail outlet and all that jazz, and I don't like the idea of storing outside. But anyway,
That's why this meeting's set up like this.
yeah, good.
You know?
Does the commission want to move in the direction of implementing a zone change to,
not allow, say, landscaping
Right.
companies that do sheds. Hey, I have a shed thing, I'm gonna display sheds outside, or something like that. Contractor yard,
Yeah.
which right now are allowed by special permit, and people keep coming to us, I want to put a landscaping company in this.
So they can handle all their trucks.
Right,
Yeah.
so it basically
Yeah.
becomes
In that
truck
big
storage.
parking lot you're talking about.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Fletcher had that, Fletcher had a bunch of trucks back behind their building.
Yeah, I think swim pools might be a situation like, kind of like that, I'd have to look at how they got approved.
Isn't there something behind the Quest too, on the other side of
Yeah,
the street?
Quest's a whole grandfather issue.
Oh,
That is-
there's definitely a.
Oh, there's definitely
landscapers
some issues
behind
back
them.
there.
Yeah, no, yeah, that, and that's, they got their hands slapped, that guy passed away, but,
Yeah,
the brother.
so,
You get into a little bit of a sticky situation though, because Goodwife Shopping Center is in the design business zone.
no, I thought they were DC. We'll have to take a look at that.
I guess we need to take a closer look at that.
We're gonna, but I think this is in response to when a number of people keep pointing at the book and saying, but this is allowed by special permit. We said, I don't think the commission's going to approve a landscaping company where you park 6 trucks, you leave the building empty, and you're using it as de facto truck storage.
Right.
I think that's a service business use,
Yeah.
Yeah. And
not
more-
necessarily a use that if George moved his office above or next door, he wouldn't want to see that all day or hear that all day. Whereas if you go to the service business zone, it's expected that,
Yeah.
and that's why we don't allow
We're
offices.
leaning toward less intense use.
Kind of the transition.
100% agree. All right, anything else before we move on to this one? You good?
Nope,
And the
thank you.
last thing on here, you have blade signs.
Right, but this came up at the Architecture Review Board. A number of folks have recently gone to the Architecture Review Board for blade signs of 7 square feet. And the ARB says, ooh, we really don't like 7 square feet. As reference, there is, the one that is 7 square feet now is Wim. Wim is next to Sipster's.
Mm.
Their blade sign was specifically approved at 7 square feet. So when you drive by it, and you look at that sign, that's a 7 square foot blade sign. I think Sipster's might be a little less, but I'm not sure. So the ARB, amongst their group of 9 of them, is kicking around the idea, do they want to reduce the maximum size? And they've set up a subcommittee, and they're gonna study it, look at what they've approved in the past. I want to at least alert you that that request may be coming from the ARB. It won't be in March, it won't be in April, might not be till May or June. But as you look at blade signs, kind of,
Pay more attention to
Pay
it.
Because
more
everybody's
attention.
going to them. That's next to Sotheby's where they were gonna put Compass in there, remember?
Yeah.
I've never noticed the Wim sign of
yeah.
7
It
square
is
feet versus.
perpendicular to the building?
It is perpendicular to the building, right next to
Can't
Uncle's.
place it. 7 square
Between
feet.
Uncle's and Sipster's, it's 7 square feet, so it's like 3 by 2.
So that's the biggest it could be.
That's the max size.
And ARB wants to make it smaller?
They want to, most of them are smaller in town, to be honest.
Yeah.
So when you drive around, you look and be like, oh yeah, that's probably, most of them are smaller.
Doesn't hit you in the head as you walk by on the sidewalk, but okay, I guess it doesn't.
And just as a background on that, we hired Glenn Chalder from Planometrics to study this thing for 6 months.
Yes,
He went over and we went round and round and round on all the signs in town, and we switched it once before. And that was really because there was a ZBA request. And we tightened all those things up, and we landed where we landed.
yeah, I don't remember if this specific item is a holdover from the prior regs, but,
Because I lost it, because Amy's Abatakis wanted to do a sign like this at Maplewood, and I thought it looked great, and I think they put it in, and somebody smacked them around, and they had to take it out. and
yeah, they got the nice ground sign now.
That was a great sign.
So just think about it as you kind of, in your travels,
Mhm.
pay attention to blade signs, but
How big are all these new signs inside Federal? And what about David
blade
Genevieve
signs?
said? Yeah.
Well, that's what's bringing up, Federal Realty, each tenant, and they've got 20 or 30 retail, restaurants, personal service uses, they're all coming to ARB. So if you've watched the ARB agendas, they're held in this room, and usually it's the proprietor and Patrick McMahon will come, and they'll want the blade sign, the wall sign,
Great.
you know, some neon sign, whatever you're doing, so.
You're dating yourself, right?
So,
I'll even make those anymore.
that's why it's come up numerous times, is they want consistency, they want the whole place to look good, and they want the oversized signs.
They beat that to death years ago, along with Corbin.
Desired size
So,
is 0 by 0.
All right.
Thank you.
Just quickly, do our regs currently have a dimension requirement for blade sign?
They have a maximum sign area of 7 square feet.
Okay, so it's not just ARB saying we don't like anything bigger than this.
Right.
It's a.
Right, so it can't be more than 12 feet above the ground,
Okay.
bottom shall be no less than 7 feet, shall not project more than this.
Right.
Unless you're getting taller.
Not likely.
Walking around on stilts.
We're good with that, potential zoning regulation amendments?
Yep.
Any questions? Good, next. Recap of pending litigations. We got something in our packet, which is a list of pending litigations. It's a one-pager. this was something that I asked these guys to put on, just to update us on what we're doing, where we're going. The reason why it popped into my head is because I'm gonna say, quote unquote, we won the case from Hardy Brown, which is the house on Peach, is it Peach?
26 Peach Hill.
26 Peach Hill. And the memorandum of decision is 25 pages. It's all public record, nothing's being hidden, it's all thing. And if you read this thing, and I read parts of it, and I'm not really a lawyer that likes to read all this, but I read it, it basically said that the commission did a great job, the commission did a great job. We proved this, we proved that, and the judge backed us up on all these specific items. So I thought that was cool. I think relative to this one property issue, there's a bunch of other cases, but I just wanted Jeremy to update us on some other things. And the other one I know, which is on here, is, we got, I always call it sued, but it's definitely the wrong word. Appealed on the 76 Tokenique Road, which where we approved the Montessori school, and eventually they pulled it, and they just dropped it. So,
They dropped it.
you want to just go over your list real quick?
Sure, and also what I found very interesting about this, when you look at the timing, I tried to put in the list when appeals were filed, so you get a sense of time. When you look at the list, March 2022, May 2022, that's a year's gone by, and we're not in the courtroom yet. So certain things, and it's a little mysterious how certain things get to court very quick and others just never get there. So it's a moving target with these changing priorities. The next administrative calendar is March 23rd, and usually as those calendars, you get, okay, let's see who's going to get on the fast track, the slow track, which case the judge is going to push you to settle. So we find out a lot more in a couple weeks. Certainly, without going into a lot of detail,
The first three are easy, so.
the first three are resolved, right?
The three parklands is settled. I actually did put a call into Bob Gillen to see if he's moving forward, like I said at the last meeting, and haven't heard back from him yet. Then Hardy Brown we just talked about, but there's some other stuff in there. And then why don't you go with the other stuff? What
Sure.
happened with 26 East Lane?
26 East Lane, as you know, that's David Genovese constructed those two buildings. And the neighbor did not appeal the original approvals, but when the commission then modified the approvals to allow staff to live there, that was appealed by Mr. Pierkowski, the neighbor. So that appeal was filed over a year ago, and no scheduling orders yet. So
That's because we said one person can leave in each house.
I think it was one staff person in each house, so.
Yeah.
So that, we'll find out more on the 23rd. 175 Brookside LLC versus EPC. You may recall both EPC and the Planning and Zoning Commission approved a two-lot subdivision at the corner of Stonewall and Brookside Road. EPC approved it in 2018. P&Z approved it, but not the regrading for the western lot. They came back to the
Doug DeVesta came in. And was
Doug
like,
DeVesta, and so that is appealed. They just appealed the EPC decision. They were not happy with some of the conditions.
They're appealing the conditions under which it was.
Right, P&Z they did not appeal. They got an approval. Again, what's interesting, and Steve's mentioned this many times, we're not getting appealed always on denials. A lot of our approvals get appealed, such as 3 parklands, the EPC decision 175 Brookside, the Pierkowski versus P&Z. These are approvals, these are not denials.
That's one where they're building a house in a flood zone and the basement's designed to flood. That's why we put backup generators in it. The basement, that's totally, I know it is.
Yeah, I think EPC had some issues relative to the wetlands, the
Oh, but that's all,
driveway.
they're appealing EPC, not us.
Not
Okay.
planning and zoning.
Next.
Pemberton 16 versus planning and zoning. You may recall there was a text amendment put forth by Bob Maslin to reduce the age. That was one where the commission did deny the text amendment, and that continues. You're all familiar with the case of Mahalski versus planning and zoning, the appeal of the commission's decision to approve a text change in a special permit relative to Board of Ed lights. We are working on the return of record for that matter, and we'll find out in a couple weeks how quickly that goes to court. But the earliest we think it would see the courtroom would be July.
And the lead lawyer on that is,
Joe Williams out of Shipman and Goodwin, our Wayne Fox and Patty Gog of Curtis Brincroft represent the town, and we're co-defendants.
that says P and Z and Board of Ed, so I think the Board of Ed lawyer is leading the charge, right?
Yeah, we're working closely together.
Okay.
Certainly, we're co-defendants.
Yep.
Hardy Brown, as we talked about earlier, there's a number of court cases, various appeals. The most recent appeal was something was put before the ZBA, and the ZBA said this was not filed in a timely manner, according to the state statutes. We can't hear the case. It wasn't filed timely, and they have appealed that.
So that's not us, that's,
That's the ZBA appeal.
so Hardy Brown is the guy that owns the house, right?
Mr. Hardy lives at number 22. He lives in the back. Mr. Brown is the gentleman who's building the house.
He doesn't
But
live there anyway, right? Do you live down?
they did move out. They decided not to live there while the house is being built, so they did move out. So that's why one of the appeals is moot, because
They're not even there.
he didn't take advantage of that. So,
Okay.
Is the property under construction?
yes, the house is moving along. They're out there every day, hammer, nails, so,
At their own peril?
At their own risk, of
ZBA
course.
does?
That's it? That's it? There's nothing else that we're missing?
that's it. So, as I said, it's changing priorities, but keeps us out of trouble.
Any questions?
No, sir.
Good, right? Okay. Thank you. Next, discussion of electronic packets. You want to, we tried this once before. We're going to try it again?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we are headed in the direction of implementing electronic packets for the various land use boards and commissions. We started with the Architectural Review Board several months ago. For the past few meetings of theirs, they've been using iPads to access each of the agenda items and review those materials on their devices, whether that be their iPad or computer, during the meeting. We're slowly expanding. Environmental Protection Commission just moved to the iPads as well.
You giving everybody iPads?
Everyone gets one if they want one.
We do have iPads to distribute to commission members. With the same case that George has there.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Right.
Planning and Zoning Commission is next on the docket as far as moving in the direction of electronic packets.
You can do it.
I printed the thing out. It was 25 pages.
Do it.
And I didn't
Single
say.
sided.
I single-sided.
Oh my
You
god.
can do it.
No problem here.
You guys are
Stop wasting
killing
all
me.
these
I'm good.
trees.
Killing me.
Many of the
Many
other
times.
boards and commissions in Lower Fairfield County, including Greenwich, Westport, they're all moving in the direction of these electronic packets.
Sounds like
Just
I'm
to cut
retired.
back on the amount of paper.
Well,
Right
the
now,
applicants love it, because when you look at what they have to bill their clients,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
crazy. And
Those printing shops are gonna go out of business in Norwalk.
Yeah.
so I asked New Canaan, I said, how long have you guys been doing this? They said, the moment COVID started, March 2020, that was it, no more packets.
Oh, yeah.
And they didn't get iPads. They just, they were like,
Take with you.
sorry.
Right, so
So what will happen is
we go with is it .gov or something like that? CD?
OpenGov, right?
OpenGov.
All the paper, everything's uploaded.
So when you get, like, there's a floor plan we get a big floor plan that's 2 feet by 3 feet, that's uploaded on the website, and you always send us a link on Friday, like, this is where the stuff is.
Fred will send a link.
Correct.
So he'll say, first agenda item is this, here's the link to that project, and when you go to that, click the link, it'll list all the documents, what in essence would be in your packet. Cover letter from Wilder Gleason, letter of authorization from whatever, proof of mailing, and that way you can flip through it like you normally flip through your
So
packet.
I gotta look at the site plan on my phone.
We will still have large copies in the office for those who say, I really need. because it is tough seeing it on a phone.
I would
Well, even on these, the real
Yeah.
schematics are gonna be tough, but that's why we're gonna need these
The
things.
ARB, they meet in this room, and they sit there, and then the applicants just keep flipping
Yeah.
through it on.
That's
Yeah,
good. I
yeah,
think that-
yeah. I
The
do
ol-
think you need a large format to reference.
And
during
make
the
it
meeting.
mandatory, not people bringing in the boards pointing at it, right? But then the only other thing I would say is that, I'm all for it, I think it's a great idea, we should move it. My garbage haulers are getting upset about how heavy my recycle bin is. But and over time, we'll probably get better at it, but maybe if the town can put some sort of like guidelines and rules about naming conventions for applicants, because when you go on the OpenGov website, it's like, here's a list of 9 files, and they're all like 40, it's somebody who was like 60 years old who did it, and there's like spaces in the file name that get translated into like a %20, and there's all kinds of like, so
Yes.
it's very difficult to like figure out, whereas we get the packets, they're right and nice in order, and it's very easy to follow sort of the narrative, but going online and just clicking through, it's sometimes much more difficult when I'm looking at historical ones that I've gotten rid of the paperwork for. So
Oh.
maybe like some rules around that to tighten that up a little bit.
I agree 1,000% for someone who uses it every day, and you say, oh, I really need to look at the survey, and you click on survey, and someone's uploaded a site
30
plan or
different
a drainage
surveys.
plan. You're like, no!
Right.
And you're like, okay, now I gotta click on the drainage plan to hopefully get to the survey or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
so it's really, just what you said, the importance of having it well organized, and we can reiterate that. But I think it's, you know, we were thinking that the ARB would be the most hesitant, and they really embraced it. They're like, oh, it's great.
Yeah,
You know, they have more of an issue because colors are a little different
Yeah,
on paper
for sure.
versus on a computer screen. But EPC at first was hesitant, they now love it, and you'll get your packets quicker. They
Yeah.
won't get wet, snowed on, missing, save us hours of delivery,
Yeah.
gasoline.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Go easy on me.
Yeah.
But I voted on this one, I know that. You're a lawyer, right? You all paperless, aren't you?
Yeah, mostly. No, not for, well, mostly.
So it's not gonna happen next month, but I'm guessing by May,
Do
we'll
it.
start moving along.
Let's do it. Let's start next week.
garage.
Start next week.
Yeah.
Really?
Rip the Band-Aid off.
That's
Sharon's gonna be so happy.
it.
Right, but the advantage is you don't have to bring your packet to work and then bring it home, and then it's always with you,
Yes,
the little iPad.
you can do it. You can do it.
And as you said, we can always request the printed.
And if you say, you know what, this isn't right, can you print me a full size? Of course.
All I know is Fred drives past my house on the way
He
home on
does, so-
Thursday, so.
Oh, yeah. All right,
Okay.
next.
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 What do we got here? Initiatives and goals for the year. We gave this out a while ago. It was just a handout, I guess it was Thanksgiving of last year. So I want to kind of sort of, the past is the past. I kind of sort of want to go to the
23.
last page, page 3, which is drafts and initiatives. I think we got this. In my bigger question, is there anything that is not on this list that you guys as commissioners want to add or that we're missing? Some of the items on here, or, you know, well, actually, I have to do that. We have a commission training class this Saturday.
Saturday.
Everybody
Yeah.
signed up for it?
Nine
Gotta get their
to four.
FedEx, we get FedExes in the mail of the
Big
textbooks.
book.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I got
Did you all receive the
I got mine.
Zoom link?
I didn't get,
Or-
you got the link, I didn't get the link.
I got the link.
Oh, you did?
Yes, everyone?
I think
It went to what, they're in CT.gov?
No, the Zoom link.
Mine
The-
went to my Zoom.
The admin for the bar emailed the Zoom links out, I think yesterday or the day
Yeah.
before.
But it went to CT.gov?
Oh,
Yeah.
They're in CT.gov, okay,
Yep.
I didn't check it, okay.
If you don't, call the office, we'll shake them down,
Okay.
okay.
because it's going to be nothing worse than Saturday you try to log in.
Right.
So on here, we have monitor potential legislative things were going
That's
on.
the confirmation of
The first one on here, A, we're gonna get into in a little bit. Second item was possible zoning change for site plan amendments to address COVID outbreaks. We already talked about that. Commissioner training, we're gonna start that. Stormwater management regulations, section 880. What are you guys thinking about
Yes,
on that?
section 880, we did put in a capital budget request, which is winding its way. It did get through the Board of Selectmen, they were very supportive. Basically, what we have to do is it's a two-parter. Update the stormwater management manual, which is a big book, which discusses stormwater and how we address it, and then develop specific zoning regulations. For example, larger storms, you may recall the Board of Ed, as part of that project, they looked at a 100-year storm. Do we want that to be the standard from now on?
What's ours now, 50?
50? And do we want to look at the updated rain standard numbers versus, so there's a changing technology and changing standards, and we do have a price quote, and if it gets approved by the Board of Finance and the RTM, we will start the first part of the project in July.
Because that's when the money kicks in.
That's when the money kicks in.
One observation as a new commission member is a few of the applications that have been before us where they meet the thresholds for meeting the 50-year storm and all this other, for incremental changes, but the premise of what's existing is problematic. So they're designing structures to meet incremental drainage issues, but yet the baseline is
It's exactly one of the things that we're gonna struggle with a little bit.
Yeah.
Right now, there's 1,000 square foot standard,
yeah.
which is if you're doing 1,000 square feet of new impervious, which a little bigger than this room, say 20 by 50,
Yeah.
you need a drainage plan, a drainage report.
Yeah.
Do we want to lower that threshold? Do we want to change the standard for new, like, for example, if you have a new house, but it's smaller than the old house, what standard should we use? So there's a couple things that we want to re-examine, look at, maybe be a little stricter on, or a little more
Yeah.
clear on
Yeah.
as we go forward. And that's really our opportunity, working with Public Works and their experience in saying, okay, we've now reviewed hundreds of these things. You know, how do we want to
Where's
do
the
it going forward?
reasonable standard,
Right.
you know?
So,
We had a consultant that's gonna do.
we have a quote from Ty and Bond, Joe Canis.
Yep.
We can't hire him yet because no money,
Right.
but presumably, if it gets approved, we would pull them together, they'd sit down with us and the engineers over in Public Works. We'd have a meeting like this where we hash out questions like that. What's the square footage threshold? Size of the storms we want to analyze? What kind of hydraulic studies do we need? What kind of data do we want? And kind of start pulling that together.
Okay, so that's that one. Accessory apartments, we
Just
just
talked
talked about that. That's first quarter 2023 to fourth quarter, so we're in the first quarter now. We talked, we gave some ideas. I don't know when Dave Keating, is his money for this? If he's gonna work on it, is that next year's budget?
We have money in this year and next year, so
Okay,
it can continue on.
cool. Modified inclusion housing, modified inclusionary zoning regulations. We did that last year, going from 12 to 14%.
Yep.
We want to do it again?
Well, I think that's something to think about, is more and more communities are using that. They use different numbers, different standards. We get about a call a month. Tell us more about your regulations. They seem to be working. So it's,
Some towns are going to 15%.
Yeah.
At the Delta, I don't think between 14% and 15%, it's nothing. It's a half.
it's a fractional.
Yeah.
And then consideration of sidewalk upgrade downtown. That's the plan we gave you. I want to get into that a little bit later because it wraps into some of the other stuff that's going up in the State House. Is there anything, and then we can look some quickly else stuff, accomplishments. Christian return, we talked about that, in 2001. Minimum house size, we did that. Modified rear, we did that. Multifamily park, we did that. Allowing 2 houses, 1 lot, we did that. We're getting in trouble for that. Minimum house size, we did all that stuff. Outside parking. 22, COVID, accessory apartments, affordable housing plans, I mean, is there anything else that we should address that comes in? You good, Adam? Anything you think of, George? Amy?
I mean, I think a huge thing that is gonna be keeping track of the implications of all of these proposed legislations and how that reverberates through our decision-making.
The only other thing, and that's true, we're gonna get that in a second. The only other thing that I want to do, and maybe it's a moot point, is the front page of a planning zoning application, it's got certain items on it. I would like to add other items on that, like square footage of houses and
Okay.
how big it is. Because I think the only thing that's on the front page is like acreage and lot size and how close it is, whatever it is. One day I'd like to look at that form, and if it's gonna be electronic, it's gonna be different than the paper one we usually see. Like sometimes like Maslin fills it out, or Wadley Gleason fills it out and it comes in the packet. I'd like to look at that form and put a couple other salient points or executive summary items on there, like a house. I always ask how many bedrooms, what's the
Well, it
square
also
footage?
helps the assessor.
Agreed.
Because the
Yeah.
first thing the assessor does, when they get a copy of the permit, you know,
What's the square footage?
Square
And
footage.
sometimes these guys say, wow, wow.
Right.
I'm like, you're full of baloney. You know how big the house is.
So,
Exactly.
okay, we'll take a look at that and we'll fine tune it.
Okay. All right, next, we're getting close to an hour and 15 minutes. All right, update on legislative session that's up in Hartford. Two things. One is, in your packets that Fred's got today, in the last week, Fred is great about it. February 28th, in the meeting I was not at, that day, he wrote a 4-page letter answering some of the stuff to the items. On 7 bills, is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 bills. That was the letter on February 28th, and I think you guys should have gotten that. It went to Monica McNally, was CC'd on it, and this letter was sent to, it was posted to the website for the general house, for the housing committee for testimony, and then it was sent to our 2 town reps, which is Tom O'Day, who kind of sort of domiciled in New Canaan, and then Tracy Mara, who is our new rep here in Darien. Excuse me, that I asked Fred if you could email it to our 3 senators today, which is Patricia Billy Miller, CC Mara, I think it is,
There.
and then, again, God bless you, these are House bills, not Senate bills, but some of these things that Fred's gonna get into in a minute already came out of committee, and are going to the, you call it the GFGA or General Assembly?
General Assembly.
General Assembly, so it's going to, it came out of committee, it's going to the floor. But Fred went through this thing, you know, item by item, bill by bill. Prior to this letter, I met with our representative, or one of our representatives, Tom O'Day. He has a bunch of different bills that he put forth. He explained them to us in very, very high level at a League of Women Voters thing. And some of these are his bills. And I want to, so he's doing something that we as a town, and I think is good for us. I want to make sure that, you know, he had our support. Tracy Morrow, who I also spoken to numerous times, she's not on the quote-unquote real estate side, which is the planning, housing, and what's the other committee? What's it called? Planning, housing, and
Planning and
then,
development?
yeah.
Planning and Development and the Joint Committee on Housing are the 2 committees that
Yep.
each of these bills are being filtered through at this point.
So Day's involved in those committees. Tracy Martin's on a total separate different side. And so she doesn't get any, and Terry Wood had the same exact thing. So that's that one. And then the other letter, and I'll turn it over to Fred in a second because he sent us a memo, is the one from March 2nd, I think it's the date of it? Yeah, March 2nd. So March 2nd, that was another one that I think Tom O'Day was talking about, which has got to do with changing, it was changing, making, what we were just talking about a second ago, which is the affordable, the accessory dwelling units. They're not deed restricted, but they're natural places for lower cost housing, so to speak. And they want to be able to naturally include those kind of sort of towards or moratorium or 10%. I don't think you get moratorium points, but it goes to 10%. One of the other things that he was trying to do, Mr. O'Day or Representative O'Day, is to lower the threshold from 10% affordable in town to get the 830G thing to go away down to 5%. So Fred sent out this last week, then today we got another email on 2 Senate bills that are coming up. We went through this whole exercise again, I want to say 2 years ago. I checked my calendar, 2 years ago, it was in April. The thing we did on that, Planning and Zoning Commission, we seated a subcommittee to review all this stuff. I think the subcommittee was probably seated in January. I think they gave us our report in April. And Kara Gately was on it, and
Jennifer Leahy,
Jennifer Leahy was
I think it was
gone.
Jeff Ball.
Jeff Ball.
No, not Jeff Ball,
Um,
Jeff, the other guy with the beard. God, I forget his
He
name.
moved to Ruwait.
Larry,
Larry
Yeah,
Warble.
Larry Warble, yeah.
Those three guys were on it, they headed it up with these guys, and they studied the stuff, they gave us a report. And I think Jim Ram was on it too.
Yeah, he was.
All those guys studied it. It's a lot of the same stuff. This time, we didn't seat a subcommittee. Fred and I talked about it a little bit. We know what's going on, so that's what this is. So Fred wrote a memo that sent us today that's going over it. And I lost it here someplace in the shuffle. Do you want to go over what you want to tell us? Because you're become the resident expert on all this stuff.
Sure, yeah, I'll do my best.
It's hard.
I would focus on things that are prospects of going forward.
Yeah. Steve's right, though. Over the past several years, particularly the past 2 and 3 years, this housing legislation and the more widespread discussion around affordable housing and transit-oriented development in the state and in our region and really across the country has hit a peak, and so it's been a bit of a process to try and track these bills. What I've prepared here is a list of 7 bills that, as I had mentioned, are being filtered through both the Planning and Development Committee and the Joint Committee on Housing. There's been a number of public hearings held already by each of the committees. Some of the legislation has been voted out of committee to the General Assembly, and some of the legislation that we submitted testimony on, the 2 bills that we submitted testimony on, failed to advance to the General Assembly. So those are dead in the water as far as this legislative session goes.
That was our hope.
Well, the bills that
we supported that legislation.
Oh, both of them?
We
that
supported
was-
some items.
that was put forth by Tom O'Day and some others as well. We were notified on Monday that the Planning and Development Committee will be having their next public hearing on this upcoming Friday, on March 10th, and they'll be discussing a whole range of bills on Friday. The 2 that we sort of picked out of that stack are on page 1 and 2 of this memo. SB 1141, an act concerning transit-oriented development. This bill is essentially the desegregate Connecticut bill that was put forth last year,
The
in
first
last
one.
year's session.
Yeah, the first one, 1141.
1141. Desegregate Connecticut
Yeah.
no longer supports this bill, and they are coming out with their own bill, which doesn't yet have a number or a public hearing scheduled for that yet.
And just to interrupt for real, so you don't mind, that's this letter. That's this thing.
Which one?
This one?
Ah,
They call it the work ride or something like that?
Yes,
Yeah, the
correct.
work ride.
Yeah.
And just as a quick aside, the director of desegregated Connecticut lives in Manhattan. He lives in Stuytown,
Oh.
where I used to live. I was like,
Some VIP with them was Luke Cronin's wife, isn't
Yes.
she retired.
Yeah, she's not the director of the organization anymore. I believe she has some involvement in it.
No,
but,
she's not even on the webpage. But I don't want to pick her up. Yeah, if you go desegregate, she doesn't show up.
But yes, SB 1141 was essentially the bill that was put together by Desegregate Connecticut last year. As I said, from what I understand of the situation, well, we know they're putting forth another bill, and I don't believe they support this currently.
So are we going to write a letter on this one?
We can. What I tried to do is sort of just put a little bit of a summary in connection with each of these. So SB 1141 would require municipalities to permit by right housing at unlimited density on parcels within a half-mile of a train or bus rapid transit station, with the average housing density permitted within that area at least 15 units per acre.
And
then
that bill I
5429
last year.
was from Desegregate's bill from last year.
I testified to that last year on the Zoom call. And to our town, it's a simple math problem. It ends up being like 3,000 units in that area if you take out certain things for 20%, for this and 20% for that. The thing that is important is the Palmer's development is 65 units on 4 acres, which is effectively pretty close to 15 per acre. I think it's 16 per acre, but we approved it with a special permit and nights and nights and nights and nights of meetings. So it's not like we're against it, but as of right, it's a whole different kettle of fish. Because you're basically taking the cap off it, and you're putting all the 6 of us out of a job. We don't do anything. So that's the same thing. And then what's the next one is?
Yeah, SB 985. This is a bill that is being put forth by the governor's office. It would essentially create a state program to provide assistance to municipalities to build housing, provided the municipality has opted into the program and designated a housing growth zone where middle housing is permitted by right, with no parking requirements and at least 10% affordable in developments of 10 plus units, and where approvals for all other housing, presumably including apartment buildings, are handled by the Zoning Board of Appeals within 30 days, and where all approvals from other commissions, including planning and zoning, sewer, water, conservation, wetlands, and historic preservation, are bypassed.
Now, that one is in our town, anything over 5 is the trigger. This is anything over 10 is the trigger. And he's a great guy, and he's done a lot of town. When Vaccaro built his 2 buildings near the corner of, was it Road Avenue?
Did the corner of the road in Dickinson or Fish?
Yeah, when he built the first 2 buildings, which is Danny's Bicycle Shop, Share Bar.
Yep, the
and all that stuff.
south side of Post Road.
We knew he was gonna do 8. He wanted to do 10, and it's 2 separate applications. And the reason why, and it's the way the law is written, if you do 4 and 4, there's no affordable housing there. If you do 8, there would have been 2. So they're 2 separate. There's a lot line down the middle, and so we effectively built. He built 8, and there's no affordable. This, and in our town, once you hit 5, you got to do 14%. This is 10, and you have to do 10%. This is the same thing that came up last time. So that's softening our regulations, which is going backwards, not forwards.
My bigger concern is bypassing sewer, water, conservation, wetlands, and historic preservation.
And this one that jumps off the page too is that there's no parking requirement.
Yeah.
So there's
Right.
nothing. I mean, you can go over Federal now, and you can't do it now because they put a garage door up. But you can go downstairs into the basement in that building, and I did it. There's a gazillion, there's a lot of parking space down there. We changed our regulations to soften it, but again, most of our stuff is inside mixed-use zones. But, I don't think we're ever gonna build anything in town of parking. And if you read that article I gave you, Westport comes into the same issue. Westport, they have where their train station is. When you go off of exit 17, it's right there. That's the site that's in question. If you don't put any parking in there, you know, as a requirement, that's gonna, it's not gonna fly. But that's, I mean, and to your point, this whole thing about state bills and the top-down government stuff, they're having the same exact issue in the state of New York. And the town legislators in Rockland County, Rockland County, Putnam County, Westchester County, Nassau County, and Suffolk County all went against it. That's the local control versus local control. It's the same thing. And Fred's spending a ton of time on this stuff, and I think we all need to be aware of it because it matters. Fred can keep going for probably another hour or so talking about this stuff. I don't think that's really productive. I think you get it, but I wanted.
Can you give the overview on what did advance the 6633? Because that just advanced.
Yes, correct. So that 6633 is probably one of the most contentious bills that's coming through the P&D
That's fair share.
at this point. The fair share bill was put forth during the past two legislative sessions, and now this is the first time that it's been voted through and has made it to the General Assembly.
That's this document, what I just gave you guys.
Mhm.
And if you look at the last page of the second handout, Adam,
This one?
Yeah.
The first part, the first piece of this is the cover sheet. We're pages 62 to 72. If you look at the very last page on this thing, or the second to last page, and whoever did this did a great job on it. If you look on page 69, it says Darien fair share allocation of units is 1,271 units that we're supposed to build in over 10 years in the district is there. I mean, you got that, and then it's a separate packet.
I
That,
didn't get this one.
here you go. So it took us how many years to build?
900.
900?
20 years, about 25 years. So going back to 1999 till about 2025, a year and a half from now, we built about 900 units in 25 years. What they're saying is they want 30% more than that in half the time.
In 10 years.
Yeah.
So it would be like you're building an Avalon every year.
Right. And the way the bill lays it out is they have benchmarks 3, 5, 7, and 10 years. So by year 3, 5% needs to be complete. By year 5, 30% needs to be complete. By year 7, 60%, and by year 10, 100%.
One of the flaws of the thinking of that, of course, is when you sign up for P&D, they don't give you a hammer and nails. We don't build anything. We approve projects, right? The commission approves projects, many of which never get off the ground. You saw it in Roten Heights. That was approved. I don't think any of you were on the commission when that got approved, maybe Steve. So you see, that one
No, it
took
was-
7 or 8 years.
The
to get-
overlay, the Roten Heights overlay zone was under Fred Kazi. That's
Yeah.
15 years
Right.
ago.
So the commission keeps approving that and other projects. Parklands approved last year, has not gotten off the ground, through no fault of the commission. So that is one of the problems is, you can approve all the projects you want, but if they're not getting built for whatever reason, whether it's economics or
Yeah.
whatever dynamic, you guys and the town gets in trouble because they weren't built.
And the state can't create more land
Right.
for us
So-
here in town.
So that becomes a predicament is, how do you, even a housing authority project, of which we've had 2 recently, those take 5 years.
When it goes to the General Assembly, is there a public testimony period?
There is, and what we'll likely see on this one
Yep.
is no community will speak in support. It will be housing advocates that speak in support, but no community will speak in support of this.
Mm.
But that's why our testimony letters went up, and then we're gonna resend them out to the.
We're gonna resend them for each
to the
bill
Senate.
so they get recorded, correct?
Yeah. because it
Agree
gets
with
posted
Joe
up there.
Communities?
The other,
It's hard to say,
yeah,
hard to say.
the other thing is, I told you guys I have these conference calls with the other commissions in town, with the other commissioners in our peer group, so to speak, which is Lower Fairfield County. And the ones that those people are focusing on are fair share.
Right.
This is the one we're talking about. And it's also this thing from 2 years ago, which according to this document has 1,271 units in our town. And then the other one is Live Work Ride. which
Correct.
we've
The one
been-
that has not been submitted yet.
Correct, it's hidden someplace, that's the guy from Stuyvesant Town that's pushing it forward. But
But
they'll,
he's missed his window to submit it for this legislative session.
I don't know.
I'm sorry?
If
Are any
Live
more
Work
bills
Ride-
can be submitted during this legislative session?
No additional bills
Got
can
it.
be submitted at this point. However, Live, Work, Ride, the proposed bill by Desegregate Connecticut has already been submitted.
Oh, it has?
There will be a number generated for
It
it.
just hasn't been
And there will be a
generated.
public hearing for it. We just,
Don't know it yet.
hasn't been announced yet.
Oh, I didn't know that, okay. That's news to me. So, there's a lot to read, there's a lot of stuff to do. I'm gonna tie it into the sidewalk thing a little bit, and if you read this article, one of the carrot and stick items is if there's some of these bills, and it's a fair share, or the other one's got the opt-out provision.
It's not fair share, you can't opt out of that.
There's another bill that's got an opt-out provision.
So
That's desegregate, that's Live Work Ride.
Desegregate Connecticut's bill, from what we understand of the situation, will have an opt-out. If a community opts out, they become ineligible for discretionary funding for infrastructure from the
Okay.
state. That's sort of the,
Carrot and stick.
yeah, the carrot and the stick, exactly.
So for Darien, what that means, we talked about OPC, Darien doesn't get a whole lot of money at all from the state government to do anything. For argument's sake, for the school that were built, which is $63 million, we got, I think it's 7% or 9% grant back. I don't know what's in that bucket, if a school grant is infrastructure or not. With regards to general number, according to the town treasurer, our budget in total is $160 million. We got $400,000 last year from the state for something. And I know the police department gets grants from them all the time when they get like laser guns or those things that say your speed limit, those are all grants. I don't think that's part of what this bucket they're talking about is. We opted out of this, the parking regulation, we opted out of ADUs, so if this ever does get through, we have the ability to opt out again if we want to. If you do read this article, Westport, I'm getting into in a second, I know, but I really do want to move fast, is Westport rebuilt a lot of their sidewalks and so did Greenwich. Westport did it with state funds. And they got like $55,000 out of some grant, and Greenwich got monies out of that Westcog grant that you and I spoke about too, to do their sidewalks. That's $55,000 on a $162 million budget. You know, it's what, 0.5%? You know, so I don't know if that matters to us or
It should
not.
be said that last I knew, the Board of Ed gets a couple $1 million a year from the state, but that's a whole different subject,
That's
but it is part of the 160 million.
correct. That's the part that I don't know what's inside. I mean, you're right, you can bust it apart and say the Board of Ed's 110, make this numbers round, and the town's 50, so it's $400,000 on 50. You know, you could do it that way, and you're 100% correct. So, but I don't know what it means, and we've never applied for it, so I don't know. But that's kind of where it sits. You know, you want to add more stuff, or does anybody have any questions on this?
Yeah, I would just encourage you all to read through the memo, and, we can certainly hit on this some more, as we move forward in the next few weeks and the next month or two, as things start to make their way through the committees and eventually get debated in more detail in the General Assembly. And of course, let us know if you have questions with respect to SB 1141 and SB 985 going to public hearing this upcoming Friday. I think we can go ahead and draft some testimony to, that would presumably be submitted ahead of or during the public hearing on these bills as well.
And if anybody, I mean, my job is, the way I see it, is I basically speak for the board, and it's not a dictatorship by any stretch of the imagination. And all the letters are reviewed by me and written pretty much by Fred with the bullet points. So if anybody has anything, if I do testify, I think I put my hand in the hat to testify this Friday, if I can do it. Anything people want me to say or not say,
Which one would you be testifying about?
the two that are on the top here.
41 and
985 and then
Okay.
1141, which is transit oriented, which I testified at the last go round, and the other one on 985, right? That's when you said
Right.
that out.
Yep.
Um,
Those are Friday.
Those would be the two, right, as my schedule permits, I don't know. I could not testify on the 28th we missed, and last Friday I missed. And it's kind of really short notice. They tell you when this stuff comes out on Thursday, on Wednesday, they tell you Wednesday, it's gonna be on Tuesday.
Right.
So I call Fred Friday morning, I call Fred Thursday morning, I tell him, Fred does what Fred does, and then Monday you gotta get it ready. So that's where the timing comes down
Yeah,
to.
it's very short notice. And in terms of the speaker lists as well, we're seeing hundreds of people sign up to give testimony for these bills.
You go all day, all night.
Yes.
Literally.
The fair share bill was came just under 300 speakers that signed up to speak
Fair share.
on it. And
Mostly in favor.
they went, the committee went, and I think 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, they
Yeah.
wrapped things up, from what I understand.
I got a text message from one of the other commissioners, I think from Greenwich or Westport, and it was 11 o'clock at night, and they were still watching it on YouTube TV.
Good for
You know, and
them.
that was the 28th, which was my wife's birthday, and I was like, what are you doing? It's like, I don't
Well,
know.
maybe they didn't have wives with birthdays then.
So,
That's how they didn't keep them.
that's why I'll get happy when it gets there, so. What time is it? Anything else? I mean, you guys have any other opinions on this stuff?
I do think we should at least submit written testimony if we can for the record. Like we did, you know, the letter that we've crafted summarizing, at least going on record.
Okay. And like 2 years ago, we had a public hearing on this after the subcommittee met. We invited our delegation. I think somebody came. Matt came, and Patricia Billy Miller called in on her cell phone.
Terry Wood.
Terry was here, Patricia Billy called in her cell phone, we had a bad connection,
Yep.
and then Matt
Blumenthal.
Blumenthal.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, he was great, we just told him, I mean, he listened, it was great. But we didn't hear from Mr. Duff or if there was somebody else, I don't think we had somebody else at that time.
It was just the four of us at the time.
Okay. Questions, comments?
No, sir.
Okay. Anything else before we move on?
Nope.
Good. Where's my little thinking agenda? Up there, we just did that, walkability on other sidewalk stuff. If you look at the only one that I gave, this is the only reason why it matters to me. If you look at the one that I gave you here, that I gave you, the last couple pages inside this book has pictures of downtown Greenwich, which is this page, okay? And the second page, it talks about the town of Greenwich used local transportation capital improvement funds. Applications went through Westcog, the form was solicited through October 7th. I guess they do it every 6 months. And do you guys attend those technical advisory groups?
We do.
Yeah.
They're once a month on Tuesdays. Ed Gentile of Public Works and I alternate.
Yeah.
He takes one, then I take one. So
So-
we have 2 projects in the hopper for that program.
Do we?
One is Norotan West, which is finishing up next month. the final widening, traffic lights, and the other is an Norotan Ledge,
Got it.
which is
Oh, that's the one with the telephone pole.
the diner, yes.
Yeah. So these sidewalks in downtown Greenwich, we're done with that money. And then if you go 2 other pages back, I think, in here, there's a picture of downtown, maybe it's forward. Yeah, in the back. There's a picture of downtown Westport that connects, there'll end up being traffic calming issues, which I'd love to see something like that in downtown Darien. That was paid by Westport, I think they paid it out of cash, and it cost, those sidewalks cost $55,000. Which is on the next page, it gives you what it is. So, I don't know if it's real money or not real money. Westport, this whole, and in the article that you got this one, Westport talks about that and says if this comes away and we have to opt out, then we can't get our money to do our sidewalks. And this whole train station thing that they have there, that's a brownfield. If the money comes out, the guy from Desegregated Connecticut, which is a liberal guy, his name's Mr. Stahl, or I think it's Saul. He's the legislative guy. He says that, Tucker Sauls, that if you opt out, then you can't get money to clean up your brownfields. And this is a parking lot that's in downtown Westport that's got a brownfield. We don't really have any public brownfields in our town, we have private brownfields, which are being cleaned up privately, but that's something that I don't think makes a whole lot of sense. And all this sidewalk stuff that we talked about, that's not gonna make it into the town of Darien budget this year, maybe it makes it some other year, I don't know. But I know those guys in from there. Discussion of, next item, discussion of affordable housing
Just
moratorium.
quickly,
Yep, I'm sorry.
on Heights Road, I think I heard you say the sidewalks were all done? All that was expected to be done of the sidewalks on Heights Road?
Heights Road, part of the approval, there's 2 things. Part of the approval for Palmer's Vaquero is to go from the corner where the old liquor store
Yeah,
was.
We wouldn't expect that to be done yet. I'm thinking more Palmer's down to Leary's, I suppose.
That's not under review. What
Oh,
I
okay.
spoke to, and it goes back to the beginning when we talked with Patrick McMahon, there's spots from Chase Bank to Leary Liquors or to Valvalas.
Yeah.
He said that he would put forth this stamped asphalt that we're talking about, the pictures of,
Okay.
on those separate spaces. If you look at like
One of
the,
which is a brownfield.
no, but that's the one that's in EPC control right now is Subway. That what you're talking about?
Yeah.
No, but if he's gonna put a sidewalk across Chase where there's a driveway there,
Yeah.
then you have Subway. Then there's another sidewalk where it goes, where you can walk
Equinox,
into
yeah.
Equinox. You can walk in there.
Okay, all right, then I misheard you. I thought you said that was all finished, but good, I'm glad it's not all
No,
finished.
the hardscaping is done, but now the driveway entrances are not.
Okay,
But he said that he would do, he liked this idea in Westport and Greenwich, and he liked it. So he said he was gonna try to put that in at the same time he's doing your screening on the HVACs. So you could have a continuous, because it's not really brick pavers, it's not model block, but it's a little bit different.
okay. I got it, thank you. Nothing's ever easy, I can see
Yeah.
that.
When he's developing Corbin, is Baywater gonna put the same type of raised speed bumps on sort of the new road that's kind of gonna cut through the post office?
Yes.
That goes across, I don't know, whatever that small connector
It's called
street is.
Market Street, I think.
Market Street.
Yeah, it's Market Street, and he wants to call it Penny Lane, but it's,
But my concern when especially when we talked about this, I don't know, a couple months ago, was just making sure it's all uniform and that he doesn't like a nicer, or darker red brick than what's already out on the post road, and it kind of looks hacked together.
that should, if it's on the street frontage, if it's on Post Road, it's gotta be model block.
Right, it's gonna match.
The internal
I don't remember
But
street,
his internal streets is what I'm talking, those
Right.
are newer
Take a
ones
look
that
at
are
that.
being recreated.
Imagine ARB would have to look at that, wouldn't
Yeah,
they should have a
it's
while.
been a while, but we'll
Yeah.
check.
Okay.
Because it does look nice, and the ones we
Yeah.
put in look nice, and people
Yeah.
want it, especially if we're gonna be building all that area up with more people and more places to do, we wanna make it more walkable
Yeah, that's the whole idea.
and slow the cars down.
Okay, any questions on that one? We're good? Okay, discussion on affordable housing moratorium reports for 832 update, anything on that?
No, as you know, we had 2 moratorium in Darien, one in 2010 that ran to 2014, and one from 2016 that ran to 2020. We are one of the very, very, very few in the state of Connecticut that had 2. It used to be just Berlin, Trumbull, and Darien. Now I think it's Ridgefield, maybe Westport, maybe not. So it changes, but we were leaders in that. And as all these projects get finalized and approved, we continue to add them to our total, and we continue to monitor the situation. But as I mentioned earlier, it takes a long time for these projects to get built. Especially the larger they are, it takes much longer. It takes years and years.
The only thing I wanted to add to that, and just because you build a affordable unit, I don't know the direct math where it comes for affordable unit to the moratorium points, but in the last 2 years, we built 12 affordable units on 26 East Lane, right? There's 2 more coming in Corbin, which is up and running. They've already built 6 and opened, they already built 8 and opened 8 inside Federal Building 1. The other 8 in Federal Building 2 is coming at that 16, so that's 16 plus 16 is 32. And then Vaccaro's thing is gonna have 15 more units. So that's 32 plus 15 is what, 47? How many moratorium points that counts into? I don't know what the math is, because you gotta figure out the income of the people
Right,
around all this stuff.
it's a very complex formula. You get less points for senior restricted units. You get more points for the more deed restricted, so that's why some of the housing authority projects get us more points, because they're aimed at very low and low income versus kind of a middle class medium. So
And the
it's-
last piece of that is you have to get the census number of what you are
right.
to figure out our new census. We know what our new census is.
I've not called Westcog to get the number yet.
So our population is 30,000 or something like that.
Right, so it's based on the number of housing units we have. So in the past, we've needed 136 or 141 moratorium points or housing equivalency points. And so we continue to monitor this. And
Are we at risk of any of the older ones falling off?
Well,
right?
certainly
Don't
that
they have
will
to
happen.
re-renovate or do something, like improve it in some way? I remember talking about this, like they gotta put in air conditioners or an HVAC system instead of window system. We're getting close to some of those getting knocked off that we built over the last couple of years,
and
right?
therein lies the flaw with 830G is you're chasing your tail, because as soon as you get to the top of the mountain, they pull out
So
units from you, they don't count
It's
anymore.
40 years, I think.
is it 20 years?
It changed, it used to be 30, now it's 40.
The only ones that are gonna expire in our time frame here, right, I guess, is gonna be Avalon.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking
But
about.
Avalon's got 35.
Yeah, it's not a small number.
No, but the reason why Avalon is also because that's an 830G project. You get these things called set-aside points.
Yep.
Which
You get
is
bonus points.
You get
for
bonus points
830G.
for 830G, which is you get 35 units that are affordable. They get their number of points, and then you get set-aside points for everyone that's even in there. The other 100, it's
Yeah, so you get a
190.
quarter
or
point for each, so
But once that falls off, they're not gonna recertify that as 830G.
No,
They're gonna
but
go
It
market
doesn't
rate.
matter.
right.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
doesn't
You
matter.
drop down
Next.
from your 10% goal, Darien's gone from, we're climbing the chart, getting more and more, but when they come off, we drop back down.
But it doesn't hurt your,
Doesn't
it
hurt
doesn't
the
hurt your next
moratorium.
moratorium.
Correct.
And the moratorium is what you built in that time frame that you apply for.
Yeah.
So I mean, for argument's sake, we could have gone from 4% to 7%. You're still under 10. Avalon drops off, you just went back down to 6
Yeah.
or to 5, right? So
Yeah.
you're still under 10, so you're still subject to it, but you can still get another moratorium, which is, that's the way the game's played. I don't know. So I guess after we get Vaccaro open or Palmer's open, the other one open, then maybe we can figure out a math.
Yeah, it's continuing to monitor. At the same time, you have all the pending legislation which is proposing to change 830G. So that's the other thing you have, is it's a changing world out there, so.
So that's basically it. Tomorrow there's an OPC meeting. I think George is going to attend.
We'll do so.
You might go too?
I don't think I can. I have
Okay.
an 8 o'clock meeting.
It's at 8:30 in the morning. There's been a bunch of press releases that have gone around town the last few days of stuff that's happening, so check your press releases. Is there anything else that is other business? We're good, right? Okay. Anyone else want to add? All right, with that said, I would entertain a motion to close. Andy
Yeah.
makes a motion, looking for a second? Adam makes a second.
Yeah, I think that's it.
There we
All
go.
right.
9:21.